o'clock. I'll call a meeting of the Winona County Planning Commission to order, and we'll start with the flag pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Amended agenda, excuse me.
So move.
Mark moves that we approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded. Patrick, okay, seconded. And is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion to approve the agenda as written, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's passed. January 17th minutes. Everybody have a chance to look at them? Any corrections or additions or? Hearing none, I need a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Arlie makes the motion. Second?
I'll second it.
Mark seconds it. Any discussion on approval of the minutes motion?
I wasn't at that meeting, so I need to abstain.
Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes of the January 17th meeting say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The minutes are approved as written. Okay, then we go into item number 5, petitions. Docket number PC 2-27-1901. To consider the petition of Roger and Melanie Brandt and Buell Consulting Incorporated regarding property located at 29668 Highway 43 South, Rushford, Minnesota, in regards to the following conditional use permit. Eric.
Okay, first of all, I believe you'll note that there was amended notation on the agenda page for each of the petitions. The new piece of information that we received was a revised site drawing that is to supersede or replace the one that had gone out originally. And the main point with that amended diagram is that the first proposal involved utilizing an easement coming off of the neighboring property. There's an existing driveway there, and as this petition went out to noticing, we did get feedback from the neighbor and said there was nothing formalized or locked up. So I believe the consultants came back and now they have a proposal that shows that it'd be self-contained on the petitioner's property. The consultant that can add to that too. Okay, getting into the agenda item. This is allowed as a conditional use permit pursuant to Chapter 10.466 of the Winona County Zoning Ordinance. Zoning Ordinance states that with that section, a cellular communication tower and auxiliary equipment would be allowed in the agricultural zoning district as a conditional use permit. Couple of pictures. First one is looking back to the southwest in the existing agricultural field. This is State Highway 43. The entrance would be right in this area. Also now panning back from about the same site, looking back almost to the south. The petitioner's farmstead, his house, and there was some exploratory borings, I believe, conducted in this area. So roughly the tower would be essentially in this area. They propose a 259-foot tall lattice-type constructed tower. I believe Verizon would be the main provider with this tower. And this would be the amended drawing. And I'd just like to point out the main point. You can see the previous one utilized this approach and this cut driveway that exists. The revised one shows that there would be a secondary driveway put in, and essentially it would go in this manner to where the facility would be located. I'd like to also point out the staff recommended condition that since that's a state road, that proposal would require that they obtain a MnDOT driveway or access permit. Blow up of that area. And I think pointed out with the previous pictures is just essentially a repeat that shows kind of how they intend to cut in the driveway for it. GIS overview, and the tower would be essentially in this area. A little closer up, showing the parcel in question. Nearest residential properties would be the petitioner themselves to the south. There's one then to the southwest, and really not much else within a half mile of that site. Okay, got a brief video, and you might want to cut the volume. Yeah, this is because it was really windy. So essentially this is looking now where the site was staked out, and this is looking south.
Where's the snow?
This was done
A
before
long time
the
ago.
last blast. It was cold as heck that day. It was, in fact, I think I got pretty close to this video being done, and I knew I was in a rough shape because the vehicle was about 400 feet away. I think I made a pretty quick clip back to the vehicle right over here because the wind was blowing.
I remember when it did this.
This is looking to the west along Highway 43. And back to the south. And it's kind of a rolling terrain. You can see a lot of the vision is kind of cut out as you see some of these rolling fields. And this would be looking kind of to the south, southeast, this direction. And the driveway would transverse this. I believe there is some prime soils, however there's no restriction for a cell tower on prime soils.
That's when you're running.
That's when I picked up the pace.
Eric, in this video, then the driveway goes along the line, or the driveway to the
Line
tower
fence, yeah,
goes along the line fence and then cuts straight
cuts back to the
south, straight south?
Yep, I think with in the staff report, that driveway would roughly, get the exact measurements here. About 250 feet coming off of the highway, 43. That'd be running east, and then it looks like it would run at least 250 feet to the south to where the tower would be.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Is there any other towers in the area?
I don't believe along that segment from I-90 to 43, there is, as you go, I know, west along 90, there's a few in Fremont and a few then once you get into Utica and St. Charles, they're pretty prolific. And then going back east along 90, I believe then as you get in, you'd have to get pretty close to I don't know if there's one in Warren or not that I can recall. Maybe it's off the road more. But then in Wilson, there's some, and then in Pleasant Hill as you get closer to Ridgeway. So, not, I guess.
Does this enhance the county's capability to communicate with fire and civil defense and that type of thing? Is that
Yes, there would be some substantial communication benefit.
improvement from it? Okay.
What sort of range does the tower?
I would ask that to the consultant. That's outside of my realm of wisdom.
Okay.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, at this time, does the petitioner or representative have anything to say? Yeah, you have to come up to the podium and state your name and address and.
My name is Donovan McCain. My address is 1360 Energy Park Drive in St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm here on behalf of the Verizon wireless tower application.
Thank you.
I think Eric did a very good job of summarizing it. Verizon is looking to improve its network in this area for both residents and visitors, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
According to looking at the pictures, it looks like, is it because of where the soil is, or it doesn't look like it's on the high spot, which most of us would think the higher the better.
So, from my understanding, an issue is they have to keep the roads plowed as well, so just the length of the access road is a consideration, among other things, and that's the best spot that they thought was ideal on the parcel. So they have to keep it plowed in order to be able to access it when they need to.
So,
You mean Verizon when you say they?
Yes, sorry, Verizon.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm just curious about the signal range or what sort of area it covers and serves.
You might not like the answer. I'm also not an RF engineer, but from my understanding, it would broadcast its line of sight. So at a 259-foot tower, I guess the antennas are around 246 feet, so several miles.
So I noticed there's a generator that
Yep.
powers it?
So that's actually a backup generator in the event that the power goes out. So that's to continue the.
service.
Yep.
Have you ever considered solar panels on these towers?
Not that I'm aware of.
Any other questions? Mark?
Do you allow other things on the tower? I mean, I do know there's some safety things supposedly coming out.
Yep. So
Just wondering if you allowed them to be put on your tower then?
yeah. So there is room for additional carriers to co-locate similar arrays. So the idea is that AT&T or someone else could also broadcast from that tower.
Steve?
So is the intent of the tower to enhance existing coverage, or are you trying to expand or upgrade, like from 4G to 5G, or what's the intent of the tower?
This is expanding the existing coverage. So there's a need in that area where the current network's just not meeting the requirements that Verizon has.
In the future, it might be used for upgraded.
It's certainly possible. It's a long-term investment, so they're looking to upgrade it as there's new technology out.
Harley?
Can they add like emergency service antennas onto it and that?
I'm not positive about that. I could check, but I think the idea is the network would be improved such that everyone will have the cell phone service in that area. And that should be a way of improving the.
Because we've got an antenna actually over by me and Mark, and that's an emergency antenna. And I live, hell, I can see for miles, but there's 20 feet of my driveway I don't have cell service, which is not a big deal, but there's a lot of spotty areas like Altura a lot of open area there, and there's no service there. I was just curious if those can be added to that tower, but I'm sure you're not familiar with it.
Yeah, again, I'm not the RF engineer, but I think if, hopefully we'll see improvement to the area around the tower that's being built. Well, not hopefully, there will be improvement to the area.
Okay,
We'd hate to go to T-Mobile.
I think Verizon would hate that too.
all right. How long is this contract between Verizon and the Brandt family for? Isn't that set up, or
It
you
is,
can't
so-
talk about it, or?
I guess I'm not sure, but it's, at this point, it's a 25-year.
Okay. Is there any other questions? Well, I don't see any movement, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we need a,
I move we open the public hearing.
I'll
okay.
second that.
Mark moved and Kelly seconded that we open the public hearing for docket number 227-19-01, Roger Brandt cell tower. All those any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of opening the public hearing say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the motion to open the public hearing is passed. At this time, anyone wishing to speak to the docket number 1, please step forward, state your name and address, and go to it. Okay, this time, for the second time, anyone wishing to speak to docket number 1, step forward, state your name and address, and speak your piece. For the third and final time, anyone wishing to speak to docket number 1, please step forward, state your name and address, and speak your piece. Well, I don't see any movement, so
I move to close the public.
Sheree moves to close the public hearing.
Second.
Patrick seconds it. No discussion, I presume. All those in favor of a motion to close the public hearing for docket number 2-27-19-01, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It is unanimously closed. Okay. Any discussion before we get into the findings of fact and the conditions?
Yes, maybe could I ask staff one more question?
You can ask as many as you want. That's your obligation, Steve.
The decommissioning, is there a plan for that, or what page is that on?
It's a condition.
I don't know if there was one.
Tower must be dismantled and removed after 1 continuous year of vacancy at tower owner's expense. That's condition number 8 on page 19.
Page 19?
Yeah, I think, well, it's page 19 of what we got in the mail.
So, sometimes we've been requiring bonds on some of the wind and solar towers. Do we care about that with this, or?
We typically have not for cellular towers. The condition that Kelly mentioned has been kind of a standalone so-called decommissioning factor. I don't believe Doug's looking at their plan set to see if they get any comments, but in this case, no, we have not required any financial guarantees for cellular towers.
Okay, did you want to speak?
Just that, with the wind tower that was recently decommissioned, we had a bond for road damage, and road damage was determined by the county engineer to not have been or the roadway was determined not to have been impacted, then their bond was returned, and they did not have a continuing bond through the lifespan of that particular wind facility. That may be something we look at differently in the future, but that's just how that one worked.
Any other discussion at this time?
I have a question while we're at the conclusion recommendation staff section. I didn't really understand 7. Any interference caused by the tower or its services shall be corrected at the petitioner's expense. Is that the landowner that's responsible for correcting interference, which I assume is signal interference?
It would be both petitioners, the property owner.
And Verizon?
Verizon and the cell tower would have to correct it at their expense.
And part of that is because
What date did we get the findings back? 13?
19.
landowner and their, whoever owns that land, for this, you can't necessarily find other people who don't have CUPs, which is why it's usually the petitioner. They would contract that out with others who agreements that would mean that Verizon would take care of it, but we can only find the landowner.
I don't know what it is in there.
Kelly, can you help me out?
What?
Where's the,
Page
It's
9.
page
Page
number
9.
19.
That's the original. It's 9 of the revised.
The amended.
Yeah.
19?
Little numbers.
Okay. I was looking at the big numbers. Okay, so, at this time, is it agreeable to start going over the findings of fact?
I guess I'd like to recommend that we, if no one has issues with any particular finding of fact, I'd like to maybe take them as a whole. So,
In other words, you'd like me to start with one and keep on going until somebody says something, or?
I guess,
Or just ask if somebody has a particular problem with any of them?
yeah.
Okay, I can do that, is that,
You make that a motion, I'll second it.
go ahead.
Sure, well,
Is that a motion to adopt the findings of fact as presented and recommend that the interim use permit be granted with the conditions recommended by staff?
yes.
Oh, wait a minute, hold it.
Wait,
Please.
She just said interim use.
That was what staff's recommendation was that this be granted as an interim. If you look at the draft findings of fact, there's
Highlighted.
everything highlighted on there.
Yep.
So what was presented was it as an interim with a 1 year after the end, so the 1 year after the end of continuous use, where it has to be taken down and the permit would be valid through that point, which is what would be the event triggering no longer having a permit.
Mark,
What would happen if the tower was damaged in a storm and wanted to be rebuilt?
That would be fine, as long as it was still within the same, it would be fixing the same thing, or rebuilding the same thing where it is. The conditional use permit would still be valid.
The question I have is, who wants it to be an interim use, you or the petitioner?
The petitioner asked for a CUP.
Right.
Because of the temporary nature of it, the recommendation, if I remember correctly from reviewing the staff report and comparing the findings, was that it be an interim use permit because there is a date or an event at which it could terminate. It's not intended to be permanent forever, but if it does stop being used, then the permit would no longer be attached.
council, if it's approved as a conditional use permit, then we couldn't have the year after.
Correct.
Correct.
Non-use for a year.
So I guess I'd like to state my motion if I could. I move that we approve this IUP, accept the analysis of the finding, the staff analysis of the findings, and use the conditions recommended by staff and there are 12 of them. So that's my motion.
Okay,
I'll second it, but we're
Steve
gonna
will-
still have discussion.
second it. Kelly moved and Steve seconded it. Okay, is there any discussion on this motion to recommend approval of this petition as an interim use permit? Mark?
I'm still a little confused why, if the petitioner wants it to be a CUP, why the county doesn't want to give them a CUP.
Because it has an end date. You can't have an end date on a CUP. You have to have an IUP to have an
Yeah,
end to it.
The intent was that the petitioner was gonna make that decision.
That's right. And not the county.
And the first one that comes through, we've got, does the petitioner want to speak to that?
By IUP, you mean interim in the course of the lease, or?
In just that it has a deadline where if it's,
So it's like a
the way that it's
1 year.
written is, at one year of continuous non-use, it would need to be dismantled, and at which point the permit would no longer be valid.
Okay. I guess I haven't experienced that exact scenario as presented.
So none of your towers that you've built have gone into disuse for a period of a year or more?
No, the idea is that they are, they're built so that they can use them long-term.
So that shouldn't be an issue then, the way it's written. If they want to continue using it, it will be continuously permitted as an IUP.
Mark?
My point is the petitioner wants a CUP. They want it on their property, and they want it as part of their, it'll be on their deed.
So
And I don't understand why the county thinks that they should not get what they're asking for. This is a little confusing to me here.
And even, I guess, more disturbing to me is that this seems like news to the petitioner. They don't even, they don't even,
Sure. I guess this application had started several months ago. I think the application you see was something that was started in the hopper, I guess I was under the impression it was a conditional use permit. And that's what the petitioner was informed, and that's the way the staff report.
So they didn't even have the knowledge about the.
Correct.
Okay. So, yeah, that's why he doesn't know about it. He wasn't informed on
yeah,
it.
this feels way wrong.
Yes, this is,
Just, Kay?
So the petitions are all IUP or CUP/IUP. So, the determination that's made here, it's going to be based on whether there's an NDD or not. And so from the staff standpoint, the permit is an IUP/CUP, and then the determination is based on, the discovery and the facts that are presented.
Can I make a comment? So in the scenario where the tower was for some reason taken down for more than a year, and the plan was to rebuild it, and and it passes the year time span, would there have to be a reapplication?
Yes.
Okay.
Under that scenario, that would, if it was, even the condition that's on the conditional use permit makes reference to that.
Okay.
That if there's 1 year non-continued use, there could be perhaps a zoning issue that would have to be brought.
Well, can I ask you what the time sensitivity of this is? I feel like we should table it because,
I'd prefer not to table it and to go with the interim.
And I have a question.
Just a second. You have a lease with the Brants
Yes.
for 25 years, right? Now, does that lease say that if you decide to not have it for 25 years, you can get out of it, or are you obligated to pay for 25 years, period?
No, you would not be obligated to pay for the 25 years. There are certain lease rights written into it that would allow.
Okay, council, if that's the case, then we still couldn't take and terminate this as a CUP?
I'm not sure
If Verizon takes and says they no longer want that tower there, and so they take it down, you still can't terminate the CUP.
CUPs go with the land.
CUP runs with the land, so the only way that I think the removal of it would be the one continuous year of non-use, and the removal aspect would be there. I'm not sure that they wouldn't be able to put up another tower under a CUP later down the road, because the CUP continues with the land.
And an IUP does not go with the land?
An
No.
IUP terminates at the
Right.
Termination.
particular date or event or if a condition is violated.
What if the land changes hands before?
It goes with it. It goes with the land until the date or particular event
Right,
occurs.
even if the land changes hands?
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
And I do want to apologize for not making it clear about the interim use. I know from our staff discussions, we had talked about this referencing as an interim use permit. I didn't realize that hadn't been included in the staff.
Yeah, it says submitted materials, conditional use permit application.
Yeah, so that was my fault for not making it clear that where the recommendation came from, was that our meetings and discussions.
But
Mark.
I mean,
Mark,
I understand he's here from Verizon, but my perspective is for the Brants, and they're not here right now. As far as, do they know that we're talking about an IUP versus a CUP?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so either, and that's where I'm more than a little confused with this whole.
Well, we don't know. Staff might know. Do you know?
It's pretty typical that the landowners don't attend the actual hearing, usually on their one here.
Right, but
But
it says
do the Brants
CUP right in
know
it.
It's an IUP?
No.
I would say no.
Conversation with the property owner, mainly working with
Because Roger Brandt is my neighbor, and I talked to him about this,
Okay.
and I'm sure that he doesn't know this condition, or,
So his understanding, he signed the application that I gave him.
for a CUP.
Yes, well, I guess his understanding was that I was pursuing whatever zoning necessary to build the tower. That was our understanding.
All right, I understand that. All right, now, Lynn, do you have a,
Well, I was just going to mention if the petitioner's not present at this meeting, maybe CUP, IUP isn't such a big deal for him.
well, I don't think it's a big deal, but it's,
So what is the problem? I mean, the landowner is familiar with the CUP. He's requesting the CUP. Why can't we give him what they're asking?
yeah, and to me,
that isn't the motion.
Exactly.
Well, not only because it's not the motion, the nature of a CUP is that you cannot have an end date or end event. You can only have that with an IUP. And the condition being, the tower must be dismantled and removed after one continuous year of vacancy at the owner's expense. We can't have that condition if it's not an IUP.
We don't know.
We can delete
what
that
year
one,
might
though,
be,
too.
though. I mean, he's got it for 25, but in 20 years, they might not use it. So there's really not a certain date there.
That would be an event. The event being the 1 year of discontinued use plus the removal of the tower.
Right.
So the removal of the tower after the 1 year is when the IUP would.
And that could be at 10 years or 25.
Or 35 or 40. At any point where that tower has not been used for a year and has been dismantled, then it would no longer be an IUP.
I think those terms would be acceptable. In essence, it acts similar to a CUP. It's not Verizon's intention to have it be vacant. And if at any point it is vacant for more than a year, I think they'd be more than willing to reapply for a CUP.
Well, given that it's amenable to Verizon, I would say I don't see any reason that we can't approve it as is. I think it would cause undue delay to table it and have further discussions whether, on, you know.
Well, let's call it a CUP and let's get rid of number 8 and it'll be fine. That solves the whole problem.
Well, I mean, number 8 is there for a reason. We've said that when, in other cases, when there's equipment that's been installed and falls into disuse, we want the applicant to be obligated to remove it, and I don't see why this should be any different than that, so.
So the issue to me is we're setting a precedence into the future, and in the interest of full transparency to the community, how this process is going to play out, the applicants came in asking for CUP. It looks, unfortunately, like staff did a bait and switch. That's what it's going to look like to the community. My sense is I'm going to withdraw my second. I believe we should take Mark's approach. We should issue them a CUP. Next time this comes forward, staff had better be a little bit more clear with both the applicant and us and the community on what we're doing. This will be no different than the way we've done it for the last 30 years. It's just going to be one more month before we get the CUP process working like a well-oiled machine, I guess.
So.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Kelly.
I guess characterization that it is a bait and switch, I think, is not particularly valid in this case. The application for the permit is the same application whether you're applying for a CUP or an IUP, as I recall. That's how we set it up. So I guess I have a problem with that characterization. But my motion stands. If there's another second, we can move on with it.
Okay, do I hear a second to Kelly's motion?
Can it be repeated, please?
I move that we accept the analysis by staff of the findings, and we recommend the 12 conditions that are set forth by staff, and we recommend approval to the board.
May I ask a question for clarification?
Yep.
So if we do go ahead with the interim use permit, and this is the preliminary process, it still goes to the county board, that will give time for the applicants to understand how we have refined this application, and it would give them chance to withdraw or modify.
Council?
It would still go before the county board if the county board chose to remove the interim use and make it a conditional use. They could at that time do that as well.
Just a comment on Lynn, they asked for a CUP. They didn't ask for an IUP.
It's the same application form.
They asked.
Do you think they really understand the distinctions of the differences?
That should have been staff's. They should have been forthright with them up front, and there shouldn't be question marks about that right now.
As I stated, the application was submitted prior to us adopting interim use permit.
Yeah, there we go.
The existing
Well, they could be.
Okay.
And that was the assumption as the process.
Before the board meeting, Chairman,
Yeah.
who would be in charge of making sure this is clear with the brand family?
If they did an IUP?
No, the differentiation between them with that, and if they thought it was one thing, Mark stating, and it's an IUP.
Well, if we give them a CUP, we don't have to.
Okay, do you have a comment?
My only comment is, the staff report says conditional use permit throughout, but because of possible discussions about time limitations, and an end date is why we wanted to introduce the idea of an IUP as well. This isn't to thwart the intentions of the applicant. It's not to impose staff's view on the proceedings, but every discussion on a CUP or IUP, the planning commission can take the facts and find out if there's a date limiting, some kind of limiting factor that would turn it into an IUP. And that representation is going to be true for all of them. This is only our second IUP, CUP blend, that is under discussion. But the staff report's pretty consistent because, it was developed with, when the CUP was an option.
At this point, I have two questions for Councilor Kay. How did we eventually, finally get those two windmills up north of Altura demolished if we couldn't terminate the CUP that they were built with?
So, with that one, there was a potential stake in those, and there were some lawsuits that happened. They actually took those down on their own. It didn't involve the county coming in and requiring it.
That was based on a lawsuit with a Korean firm that was completed in court in Chicago, and a decommissioning was, and the funding for decommissioning was part of that judgment, that summary judgment. And so they were forced to do it.
Steve?
So I don't think to make it clear with the words bait and switch, I don't think there is any intentions, anything disingenuous by staff. What I said is to the public, I think this is our first time going through this process. It should be done right, transparent, clear, and it could appear. I mean, people could say, hey, wait, they came in and applied for a CUP. Planning Commission wasn't even aware that it was an IUP, and at the last minute we approved an IUP. My feeling is they need to get their permit tonight. We should approve a CUP. It'll be just the same as we've done in the past. Next time we go through this process, let's get it refined and get the system working the way it should. I just don't want to create that scenario to the public. I don't feel good about it. That's why I use those words. I think that's how it could appear.
I agree.
And my thoughts and the second question I have is, if this was done before we had interim use permits, how could you arrive at recommendation number 8 when it would be illegal? See, something doesn't add up here.
What Eric said earlier, that was a standard condition that was included on all similar applications previously. The problem is that when we put timelines on those things, like we talked about when we were talking about the IUP ordinance, is that they're not enforceable. We put it in there. Doesn't necessarily mean that we can require things going forward if there's a timeline. So just because it's there doesn't mean we can't.
And this isn't the only case in this body where we put a lot of things in there that aren't enforceable.
And that's exactly why we had to implement IUPs in our ordinance, so that they would be enforceable. Excuse me, you were asking council. Council, is that, is it the right answer?
I think we got a lot of homework to go before we ever get this thing halfway straightened out.
You get a motion in a second.
Yeah. Is there any further discussion on this motion and second?
Who seconded it? Who seconded? Oh, Lynn?
Lynn second.
Okay.
Or did you or not?
I asked for clarification, asked her to reread it,
Oh, okay, so you don't.
but I'd second it.
Okay, now we got it second. All right. Is there any further discussion?
Chairman, I have a question. Who would, as far as the Brand family, who will clarify this with them to make sure that they know exactly what's going?
Staff will make sure that
Okay, all right.
You're going to tell them that you just gave them the wrong thing, what they did not ask for? I'm not understanding what you want clarified to the applicant.
Well, just have even a discussion ensuing here.
Okay.
Sherry.
So it seemed, you know, Eric sent me, because this is my first evening back here, and I asked him about interim use permits, just to kind of get up to speed. And he sent me the ordinance amendment, and then the memorandum from Attorney Nuttall. And really, it seems to me they're essentially the same thing. It just, according to Minnesota statute, an interim use permit allows for the temporary use of a property until a particular date, until the occurrence of a particular event, or until zoning regulations no longer permit the use. And that was extended, that's a Minnesota statute that came into play for counties in 2008. But it is essentially the same as a conditional use permit, it just more clearly defines an end date. And I recognize that the general public isn't going to be, aware of them because it's new. But I don't think it limits, I don't think it limits them. It's just a little bit of protection for the county. So I think, I'm hoping, I would guess that the petitioners will understand that. And going forward, staff can be a little, more clear, and then it will just get into public consciousness.
The only thing I'd add to Shree's comments is that my intention all along with this was that it should be a conditional use permit. I think when we start talking about cellular towers, he mentioned 25 years, but quite often these towers are 40, 50, 60 years, I would say. I don't see that being a
Temporary
use permit. The solar is another application that I think would be hard pressed to process that as an interim use, even though they say it's a 25, 30-year period. So I think the investment component on those changes for the applicants with those type of projects if they were to be placed in interim use. So I think there is some debate on that issue that we'd have to sort out.
Do you have a comment?
I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say the 25 is just the initial term, so there can be extensions as well.
Mr.
Kelly.
I'm sorry. So just building on what you said, Eric, temporary is kind of a relative term. Temporary is until something happens. So, I don't think temporary means short term in this case. And in this case, it means you get to use it as long as you want until you don't use it for a year. So that could be 100 years. So
There's a difference between temporary and non-permanent. The intent of temporary is that it would be short-term, and we didn't really define what the years would be. But this could be 50, 60, 70 years.
And that's fine.
That seems more like non-permanent, more than temporary.
Sure.
Arlie.
What happens after the 25 years? You renegotiate the contract?
There's extensions during the lease.
If they have a CUP, then they just continue on.
I mean, with the power.
As long as everybody's happy with the arrangement, both the landlord and Verizon,
Okay.
they would have the ability to extend it.
I think we make a vote on it.
Are we all done? It's time for a vote? Okay, at this time, let's vote on Kelly's motion. Do you have it, or Ann, you want to read it, or who's got it?
I've got it as a motion to adopt the findings as presented and recommend approval of a CUP with the conditions as.
IUP.
This is IUP with conditions as recommended.
Is it clear to everybody what we're voting on here, except Stephanie? Okay, all those in favor of the motion as presented by council, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to the motion as presented, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. I believe the motion passed.
No, failed for lack of majority. It's 4-4.
Okay, do
I
we,
don't think so.
do we want to have a,
I think it was
Hand
4-3.
vote? Oh,
do we have, let's have a hand vote then?
Yeah, we don't have 8. Is Sheree voting?
she's a voting member.
Sheree's voting? Okay.
So,
Did you vote?
yes, I voted nay.
Okay, then it is a tie. Pretty sure.
All right. All those in favor of the motion as explained, say aye. Raise your hand, I'm sorry. We got 4. All those against the motion as presented, raise your hand. We got 4. So then what do we do?
Fails for lack of majority.
It fails, okay? Do we have another motion?
I'll make the same motion except for that we approve it as a CUP.
Do the conditions have to be
I'll second
changed?
it.
No, I don't think they have to be changed, do they?
Yeah, with the exception of number 8.
Or you want to take 8 out?
We could leave it in there.
Can't be
It
enforced.
could still be in there.
There's no problem with it.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mark seconded it. We have further discussion.
I guess I have a question.
Go ahead.
Staff, does this pose any problem for you folks?
Potentially, depending on how condition 8 is interpreted and if there's a violation.
But it seems like there's even division within staff on whether they should be an IUP or CUP. So without them all being on the same page, I certainly feel good about approving what was applied for, what's in our packet, and next time let's get this sorted out, and someone wants to apply for an IUP, we'll get it streamlined and we'll get it working right.
Well, we did. Last month, we approved an IUP, and it worked fine. It worked wonderful for it.
Yeah, well, this time did.
I understand. that.
Hey.
That's great.
I don't want to intrude on the deliberations. However, petitioners can recommend a CUP that planning commission decides is an IUP because there's a limiting factor. The staff report could indicate one thing, and the planning commission, makes its own findings. They're just draft findings, what we see, what we heard from a petitioner. We're not following the final decision, the deliberations and the conditions that take place, then we're guided by that, and we'll enforce what you decide.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing no fingers wiggling, all those in favor of the motion as presented with conditional use permit in place of interim use permit, raise your hand. So all those opposed, raise your hand. It's passed. Okay, at this time, we recommend, the Planning Commission recommends the approval of this application or petition to the county board. It's up to them to approve or deny it. Okay, thank you. I guess that we now move on to docket number 2. We may get to 6 hours here yet. Let's see, where am I supposed to go here?
Page 43.
No, I gotta get,
On these little numbers.
yeah, but all I need is, this is docket number 2. Is staff ready for this one?
Thank you. Yes, we are prepared. So James and Don Biggie are proposing to add a secondary dwelling to their property out on County Road 9 there. And this is being recommended as an interim use permit because it is a trailer that is being moved as a second dwelling on this parcel for both part-time farm help and healthcare needs. They qualify under both of those provisions for, I believe it's chapter 10.4.626. And then I guess it's kind of a dual petition because the secondary dwelling, the same as their primary dwelling, will be located within the shoreland district. I believe it's 216 feet or something like that from a spring, which is still classified by the state as public water. So there's a 300-foot buffer off of that. Our required setback is 100 feet, and that's kind of dual because a tributary stream, so there's a 100-foot setback from all tributary streams, and it's actually a spring as well, so there's also a 100-foot setback from karst features. So it's got protection where they'll be buffered outside that 100-foot, but they're nearly double that required distance at this point. And then, kind of getting into a little bit of the discussion of an interim use permit versus a conditional use permit. And just because of the temporary use of this, it's only allowed because it's both part-time farm help and health care is why we're recommending it this way. And the occurrence that would terminate this would be at whichever time that they no longer need the part-time farm help. So they could continue it that way, or they continue it with someone there who needed the health care aspect of it. So it could be continued on either of those fronts. But it doesn't run with the land forever like a CUP. And it won't automatically continue with the sale because we're not going to. It could, I guess, if the next person wanted to say that they needed the help out there, but it's not guaranteed if the next person doesn't need that use. So yeah, here's kind of just an overview of where it's located out on County Road 9. And I guess maybe it'll be easiest to point it out on this one, but there is a small strip of pasture back here, which is where they intend to locate the trailer. And then the spring is down here closer to the house, and they'll cross a intermittent stream that kind of runs up the valley here. But it's, on this next slide will show it's all, oh, maybe it's one more after this, but so here the blue is the shoreland. So the shoreland, kind of the spring is the point that ends it right here, and they're about 200 feet off of that. And then they're also kind of pinched. They can't go completely out of the shoreland because they're kind of being pinched by the bluffs here, which is the nearest area of 25% slope, which is this green area. So it's kind of pinched in on some steeper slopes, but the pasture area there itself is actually quite flat. And I guess I forgot, I must have included the floodplain one in your packet and forgot to put it in my presentation, but I believe in your packet then you'll see that this site is actually quite a ways outside of the floodplain. And then just a quick video, the trailer will be kind of located back here on this flat area beyond the trees. I've tried to point it out, it's not super clear. But then they just have some pasture here with some cows in it, and then I'll spin around back to, there's their existing house, so it's just going to continue the driveway up their property a little bit, and then you kind of see how it gets steep very nearby where they're going to be building, but they're on a nice flat spot down below and avoiding the intermittent stream and all the other features there. And here's just kind of a zoomed out photo of where they'll be. And I believe the township acknowledgement form was one of the late additions to this because of the way that some staff vacations fell, and then where their meeting fell, they weren't able to get it in before the packet originally went out, but that was all amended, and Homer Township said they support it, and there should have been a sheet handed out that had kind of their letter of support. There wasn't a lot of detail in there, but they do, in fact, support the petition. Any questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Kelly.
Just so we don't go down the same rabbit hole, you meant to do this as an IUP, correct?
Yes. No, then I briefly talked over it with the petitioners to verify that during some of our previous discussion, but you can direct those questions to them, but I believe that we're all on the same page.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Or, not Eric. Blake. Okay, this time we need the petitioners, I'm sorry. State your name and address and.
James Biggie, 25823 County Road 9. I'm I would like the house up there. Me and my wife. We have the little farm, and like he said, I'm running into health problems. We had an option to sell the farm. My wife does not want to sell it. My daughter and son-in-law have moved in our basement with their 2 children. It is not working out. It is, but it's one of those things. So they bought a double wide. We'd like to put it on our property. That way they can help us. My problem is that I don't know how long it's going to be there, but if things work out, I don't know. But that's what it is. My health problems is, if you want to know, if you need to know, I have tumors in my lungs. I have a hard time breathing when it's cold. I get tired. I burn wood. They help me. I grew up on a farm. My wife grew up on a farm. We don't want to get rid of it. I got it from my father. I'm going to die there. I lived in that valley. It's ours. I raised my kids there. My grandchildren there. If you have any questions, let me know.
Does anyone have any questions? Kelly?
Did the staff discuss with you the nature of the interim use permit versus the conditional use
The
permit?
gentleman did, yeah.
And you
I
understand
do
and you're
understand.
okay with it?
Yeah.
Okay.
My only thing is I don't know how long I have, or any of us have, but my wife will need help. And that's what it's there. And when we don't need help, the kids will get the farm anyway. The trailer won't need to be there. And that's the way it is. So you can go from there. That's the way it is right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, at this time, we need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Kelly moved, Arlie seconds. Not thinking that we're going to see any discussion. All those in favor of opening the public hearing on docket number 2, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The public hearing is now open. All those wishing to speak to docket number 2, please step forward, state your name and address, and say whatever you would like to say. For the second time, all those wishing to speak to docket number 2, please step forward and state your name and address and say what you'd like to say. For the third and final time, all those wishing to speak to docket PC 2-27-19-02, please step forward, state your name and address, and say what you'd like to say. Seeing none?
Seeing none, I'd like to move to close the public hearing.
Mark moves. Cherie seconds. Any discussion on the motion to close the public hearing? Seeing none, all those in favor of closing the public hearing for docket number 2, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The public hearing is now closed. Any discussion on CUP or IUP? Seeing none,
I'll make a motion that we approve this IUP, accept the staff analysis for the findings, and the conditions recommended by staff.
I second.
Okay, Lynn seconds it. Kelly moved. Okay, is there, Mark?
Discussion, you gotta say
Yeah.
discussion.
You
I'm
got
ready for
discussion or?
Just a clarification, and I think he did it pretty well, because it's an either or. It says healthcare and the way, until the following date or particular event, it says the described healthcare and part-time farm labor is no longer needed. So should it be and or? Is
I
the
thought
question
that
I had.
same thing when I read it.
Good minds think alike.
That's right.
We would treat it as a and or. I should have had a slash there and included the word or, but I'd probably use the word and intentionally because I wanted to make sure you guys knew that in this situation it was for both currently.
I understand that, but
Yep,
if
but
you
as long
say
as-
and,
Yep, as
and
long
all
as-
of a sudden there isn't a healthcare need, then all of a sudden it's like, get out of your house.
Yeah, no,
That's
no.
not what-
Actually-
That's not what we're
Actually,
looking
if you
for.
say and, it means that there is neither of those conditions. Neither condition exists, and then that kicks in.
As,
So it
as-
has to be an and.
as long as the trailer was being used for one of those two purposes, it would be allowed to exist in perpetuity.
Okay. Council.
Council,
I would recommend tweaking the, until the following date or particular event to make it and/or, just to make sure that it's clear that one or the other is sufficient.
Right.
I would accept that friendly amendment.
Mark, would you go second, or?
Mark has to make it as an amendment first.
Is that an amendment?
Yes, I would make that as amendment
I
to
would
the,
accept that friendly amendment.
And I'll second that as a motion, so we can vote on the amendment.
I don't think we have to vote on it. if it's
No.
an amendment.
I think we have to vote on an amendment.
All right, so we've got an amendment that's been seconded to put in and/or on the original motion. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The amendment's passed. Now, is there any discussion on the amended motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to recommend the approval of an interim use permit on docket number 2 with the amended motion, excuse me, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The recommendation is passed. You understand the next step? It goes to the county board. Okay. Blake will fill you in. Okay.
March 11th.
March 11th?
12th.
Oh, 12th, yeah.
All right. Let's go back to our agenda then. And what's next?
There's some new
Okay,
business being introduced.
Cherie, you have the floor.
The Board of Adjustment, I'm sure as you all know, met last Thursday to consider the Daily Farms petition and found that 3 of the 8 criteria were not met, and so the variance was denied.
Okay, thank you. Then we need a county board update.
So at our last county board meeting, then we put on as a future agenda item to revisit the animal unit cap, and that will be on an upcoming county board agenda.
Okay, did you
you.
have a chance to do any activity on the CUPs that, or whatever we, no, the IUPs that we approved last month?
I missed the last meeting's first meeting I missed, so I don't,
Oh, okay,
maybe staff has.
Nisbet and Stegemeyer was approved.
Yep.
and that's the only one we had, right?
Yep.
Okay. So all of you are aware of that. Is there anything else, Steve?
Chris is nodding her head, yeah. So what am I missing, Chris?
The township officers had requested a change to the zoning ordinance for notification of townships that are adjacent, and that is also going to come back to the board.
Well, our county board will discuss, and it'll come back here eventually. That was what I would think, yeah.
I didn't hear that, Chris, I'm sorry.
So, yeah, I can explain. And it was at a township officers meeting that, again, I was on vacation, but they sent a letter to reiterate what they had discussed at their meeting. When a CUP falls right on a township line, currently we're only sending notifications out within that township, but the people that are in the bordering township, they want to know too. So we need to come up with a.
We do notify all property owners in adjacent townships, I think.
But isn't that the crux of their?
No, they wanted the officers of that township to actually be notified.
Of both townships.
Yes, so it would be, the applicant would have to go to two separate townships for comments. But our
Three or
notification
four.
process would grab all property owners irregardless of what township.
Okay.
So I was at the meeting, and I had been asked by the township officers to present what the current state of affairs was and what the department is doing. And at the request of the township officers about a year ago, they asked that staff notify adjacent townships if they were on the line, as well as the township that the parcel's located in. So since that time, staff has been handing out, if there's more than one township acknowledgement forms for both. But it isn't under the zoning ordinance at all under variances that we have to do that, or that they have to come back with them. Otherwise, their application would be deemed incomplete. That doesn't exist. And under IUP CUP, they only have to do the township they reside in, not the other one, even though staff has been handing them out. So their request is to make those tweaks to the zoning ordinance for under variances as well as conditional use permits, so that they both say adjacent townships, township acknowledgement forms must also be filled out and completed, or your application is not complete. So that would pretty much take care of it. And so a letter was approved and came to county board members as well as my office.
And so, yeah. So the only reason, Chris, that I didn't bring it up is because it's only been seconded at the county board level to have a discussion, and we have to find out whether there's even 3 commissioners that want to discuss it, because there certainly have been times where, last time animal unit cap, 3 commissioners said we don't want to talk about it, and it failed. So it was premature for me to bring it here until our board decides whether that's the direction we want to send planning commission.
So that is also true of the discussion about the animal.
Yeah.
Discussion about what?
The animal unit
Yeah.
cap.
So and that's all I said was, it's at the county board level and it's on the agenda.
James, I got a question.
Arlen?
Okay, at that meeting, did we ever set up, a distance or something like that? Is it just going to be considerate to do it that way, or, I mean, you got to be within 5 miles or less, or?
The discussion at the meeting was that it was if the property borders another Winona County township.
So if their land and the other township are next to each other?
If they're,
If it's 360 acres, whatever.
Because I think, okay, so if he's 5 miles away from there and his land goes, his neighbor is in between, he don't have to. If there's a little spot of land in between his land and the next township line, they don't have to.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
question.
One of the things that staff always requests, if the county board were to direct the staff of the planning and environmental services to work on something like this, is to make, to be respectful of the township officers' request while making it possible for petitioners and later staff to administer something. And that would be our goal.
Keep in mind that, I mean, the service that you're providing to the applicants, it just means they're gonna have to catch another deadline, another town board meeting, and, you know, there's gonna be additional burdens on the people served too.
Eugene, I got it.
Mark?
The question I threw in front of Kay the other day was, what about a person on a corner that borders 3 townships or 4 townships? I mean, now you've got people running all over the county to try to get, you know, that would really be a hassle to go to 4 township meetings.
So I
That
agree with
part
everything
I
everyone's
really-
saying, but open meeting laws, this isn't on our agenda, and that's why it should be coming up, is for all these questions to bear out and for us to, planning staff and everyone to work through it. I mean, public has the right to know if we're gonna discuss this, so we're just, there's a lot of what ifs and need for discussion, and we certainly wanna honor the.
Stay tuned.
We'll gather information until then, until we're called upon to put something together.
I move to adjourn.
Kelly moves to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, who made that? Patrick? Okay. All those in favor of adjourning the February meeting, say aye. Opposed, nay. The meeting is adjourned.